the website, but we've begun recording the training sessions and Zooms. It's helped a lot with like COVID and stuff, because now it's all verbal instructions. We don't touch the dogs anymore. And we'll just kind of come up here, and then we'll talk about Buddy, and see what's going on here. All right. So, go ahead and fill me in.
Adopted him a little over a year ago. In the beginning, when I got him, he had really horrible kennel cough, as well as some other stuff. He had worms, and he really wasn't feeling well when I first got him. Finally, doctor, we saw an internal medicine guy. He has collapsing trachea. We got him on meds. He's feeling better. So now we can get back to training. We had been doing some, but then he was just like throwing up the whole time and just really sick.
Yeah. What was the training you were doing before?
We had begun, some of it was very early, so a lot of it was trust building, and we started working with the clicker, try to get rid of a lot of the negative behaviors. Did not do much. To be honest, it's gotten worse since I've gotten him, the aggression and everything. I think part of it is he's really protective. He does better when he's not with me.
Does better like in what settings?
If they take him in the back to the vet, boarding, grooming.
Okay.
As soon as he can't see me, he does better.
Gotcha. Has he had any bite attempts or bites?
Attempts, yes.
Okay. What were those attempts?
Basically on a walk, if you let him get too close to anybody.
And placemat, please.
Let him get too close to anybody, it's an attempt.
Okay.
A couple have gotten closer than others, but just because he's stronger than he looks.
Okay. Is this right here on Webster? Is this in the home or?
This is on walks.
On walks. Okay,
Yeah,
so if somebody's passing by really close,
right.
Gotcha.
It's gotten to the point where we can barely even leave our alley and go walk on the street unless it's like 4 in the morning when there's nobody there.
Yeah.
Because he just goes berserk and gets himself so worked up in himself.
Okay. At his worst, like in terms of like what we're seeing now, and when he's at his worst, where is this? Is it like 5 out of 10, 9 out of 10?
Oh, this is 4, 5.
Okay. So what you see typically is even worse than this.
Yes.
Gotcha. And this has been since you got him?
It has gotten progressively worse since I got him. In the beginning, he was so sick, he just like didn't want to walk, didn't want to interact with people. He was scared of everyone. We had heard from the shelter, and the vet had seen he seems to have had some abuse before he came to me. Had some scarring. Was really like terrified of straps was a big thing. In the beginning, leash. I took off my belt once and he like ran into the other one crying. So we tried a head harness at one point in the beginning that we couldn't even get it on him because he was just so freaked out. So in the beginning he was just afraid of everything, not aggressive at all. As he's sort of gotten used to his surroundings and me and everything, he starts slashing out at people. Never at me. He's really... He forms attachments to people. Me, my parents who come visit sometimes. He knows them, he loves them. I have friends. He's always happy to see them. Anybody new? No.
Gotcha. Does he have any? When did he meet so it's you, your parents, and who else is in this little circle?
Parents occasionally, 1 or 2 friends occasionally, but that's it. I live alone.
Okay.
Okay, buddy.
Is he on any kind of meds?
Yes, he's on codeine for the cough, as well as Prozac just for daily anxiety. Yeah. We're also starting gabapentin, the vet recommended for anxiety. We're going to see how that goes. We use it as an as-needed thing. He gets freaked out at the vet and with fireworks and thunder.
Have you noticed anything with the? What's the first one that he's on? There's codeine and
Prozac.
Prozac. How's the Prozac work for you?
It helps to an extent. Not enough.
Is he on it like on a regular basis?
Yes, every day.
Anything else I should know about this guy?
That's about it. I mean, the thing is, when we're inside at home, he is the sweetest dog. He just wants to cuddle, lay on a towel, and just chill out. The minute we step outside, he's like a different dog.
And where in the city are you? Or in Chicago?
In the Loop.
You're in the Loop, okay. And how old is he?
He is just over 4.
So we're full. Gotcha. How'd you hear about us?
Google.
Google?
Yelp.
All right. In the home, like this here, the heavy breathing, right? Just the alertness and stuff. In the home, is he passive or is he
Completely passive.
always on it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
This is usually what it's like when we get in the elevator to go downstairs, and the second we get outside, he goes on high alert and is like looking for things to bark at.
For sure. And then I think you had mentioned something. Was it collapsed trachea?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's difficult to do certain things around the neck.
Sure. Gotcha. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. So before reaching out, did you do research on us?
Yes.
You know about how I train and things like that. Okay. So I have currently at least a handful of cases like this guy right now. They're all in different, like, varying stages of progress. It all depends on the owner. But it sounds kind of counterintuitive, the approach that I would use. But once you either see it or you start working with it, it starts to make a lot more sense. So what I see here so far is definitely overstimulation, an alert state. And overstimulation, if not addressed correctly, does become anxiety, which I'm seeing a bit of that as well. Like him, that's what I was asking about, right? It's all that energy's got to go somewhere, and he's unable to settle, and that's like the biggest thing that I see right now with him. Right now, so he's constantly under a state of stress. So when he's at this state of stress, and just something very quickly comes by, too close, something that causes more stress, you're going to see that lash out. Okay, because it's either fight or flight, really, and if he's on a leash, you can't run away from it, so then he's most likely going to go to fight mode. If there's attachment to you, you do give him something to protect, so you empower him in a way. Not that you've done anything wrong, but he's just like, this is my family, and somebody's got to be a protector, and it's going to be him. Okay, so we use prong collars and e-collars. Prong collar is like 2%, 1% of my clientele base, but it's used in conjunction with e-collar. And that's like if I work with a Great Dane, if I'm working with like a Canine Corso, like these really large breeds, that the owner needs physical control in case of like an emergency, but also they have the electronic control that kind of hand in hand. Otherwise, every other case that I do is just strictly remote collar. Okay. With a case like him, the first thing we do is we just get some formal structure in. So when I say it's counterintuitive, when we think of prong and e-collar, people tend to think of like punishment or like bad things are going to happen, right? And there are some people that absolutely do use it that way. There's people that absolutely use that way. Yeah, it's okay. And I'm not saying that it's not a way to use it, but it's not the first way that we use it. Okay. So the first thing you want to do with a case like this is get him under, in a more passive state, as passive as we can get. And the drugs like the Prozac and the gabapentin or the trazodone or whatever, all they really do is sedate the dog. They don't really do anything for the behavior itself.
Yeah, we've noticed.
Yeah, so it just kind of tames them a bit, but mentally, like I had a client actually who, when she took her dog to the vet, they gave it enough like sedative for a rhino, and the dog was still fighting everybody, right?
Yes.
And it's because the state of the body, the stress, all the adrenaline and stuff, overrides the drugs. So the reason why we use prong and e-collar is because dogs are physical animals. They bite each other, as you've seen, a couple of bite attempts, right? And they're physical. They use physicality to address things. So prong is of course physical, so is e-collar. Have you ever been to a chiropractor or a physical therapist? Have you ever had stim? That's an e-collar. Okay, so people usually think it's like a taser. They think they're electrocuting their dog, and I'm like, no, it's just a miniaturized TENS unit. In my opinion, it's more refined than a TENS unit. With TENS units, there's still risk of electrical burn. There's still a risk of electrocution, and if you have a pacemaker, you have to be very careful. With the e-collar, we don't have any of that. Okay? With the e-collar, it's centralized to where the collar is making contact, and he's only getting that contraction where he feels where the two probes are making contact. So there's nothing happening anywhere else. Okay. So when he goes into the state here of agitation or reactivity, like I've seen, trying to talk to him a little bit and calm down, just most humans' response, and it's kind of like, what do I have left, right?
Yeah.
There's food. But if a dog is under this much stress, chances are he's not going to take the food. So, and the drugs only do so much. That's where physicality comes into play. Our collars go 0 to 127, so it's a very wide range. Other brands go to 10. So like imagine 10 and 127 are the same, but I have to have 117 more breaks. So it's much more nuanced. So when the dog goes into a state of agitation like that, and we're trying to get through to him, we're starting low and we're working our way up until eventually, we can crack through that agitation, start talking to him like mentally, and like getting him to like disengage what's going on here, and ideally settle down. Okay. Now every case is different. Like I said, I have about 5, 6 cases like this. We got a few that are doing really well, but dialed down quite a bit. And there's some that are kind of still in progress. And there's others where the dog's just so stressed out. They're much better, but they're still in a constant state of duress, but they're not being reactive, okay? And in the cases where they're not doing as well is homework. The owner's not following through with the homework to the degree, right? Because especially with a little guy like this, it's hard for people to discipline smaller dogs to the degree that they need because they're small.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's why I like e-collar, because it takes away any physicality. With prong collar, you have to yank them. And the reason why I don't like prong is, like, let's say I have a dog that's fear aggressive, so they're being aggressive because they're scared, is if the dog is scared of me being aggressive, it's self-defense on their part. And if the owner corrects them with the prong collar, for the dog, it's illogical because they're scared.
Right.
It doesn't help the fear. If I correct the dog, then I just reaffirm in the dog's brain that you should be afraid of me because of the physicality that's coming from the potential threat. So that just tells the dog, yes, be scared of me. With e-collar, they don't know where it's coming from. Okay, so that allows me to kind of neutralize all that stuff, still shut down the behavior, but then teach the dog that there's nothing to actually be afraid of. Okay. So with this little guy here, even though he's smaller, his number could be 95 out of 127 to get him to settle, right? And then when he's not in a state of agitation, his number might be like 25, like it's much lower. But that's where people tend to struggle, is they're thinking, but he's so small, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. There's level of stress, and dogs are physical animals, so their tolerance for physical discomfort is fairly high. And when you put them under emotional distress, they can be even higher. Okay, so with a case like this, obviously this we need to stop, right? What are you trying to achieve goal-wise with Buddy?
Basically, stop this. I want him to go out and go on a walk and be happy and enjoy it and not stress out and not start panting excessively, not try to attack people, and he'll be able to walk down the street. Because he loves long walks, but we can't do excessive walks anymore.
Sure.
It's just fun.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Either of us.
What else?
That's the biggest thing. Stop attacking other dogs would be nice.
Okay.
Stop trying to attack people.
Okay.
Something at home barking in the crate is something I'm sure there's a way to address. I'm not sure what it is.
When have you seen this barking in the crate?
When he's by himself.
So it was like if you leave to go get groceries or something, he's kenneled up, and he's barking the whole time?
Initially he was. We've been gradually working through it, doing all the separation anxiety recommendations with that, so don't interact with him an hour before. First just like leave the room, then leave for slightly longer periods every day.
Sure.
So he's still barking for about half an hour.
Do you live in an apartment or condo building? Have you gotten any complaints?
No, because I do not leave my apartment after 6 p.m.
Oh, I gotcha.
Because he'll start barking.
For sure.
So I don't leave between 8 and 6.
Gotcha. 6 and after 6 to 8. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. So we got that. What else? The biggest thing.
Those are the biggest things that really extend of it.
Okay.
A lot of the aggression stuff will help with the pulling on the leash.
Yeah. So there's a framework to it.
Yeah.
So, with the barking in the kennel, what we most likely do is just get a bar collar, and we can provide you the recommendation, send you the model that I would suggest. You would most likely need an adapter. The adapter is meant for extended wear. So for the e-collar, because there's 2 probes, if left on the same spot for longer than 2 hours, we can develop as pressure sores. It's not from the stim or anything. From the 2 things, yeah. Are you a nurse or something?
No, but I had medical issues growing up. So
Okay, so you're aware of all
right
this.
around there.
Yeah. So, because typically anybody in the medical field, like, will they'll right away start picking up on stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they'll get pressure sores. So the adapter is meant to prevent that from happening. So, like, you can leave, you know, let's say you want to go for dinner with friends and stuff, and come back at 10 and not have to, like, worry about not leaving after 6. The bar collar will allow you to do that. Okay. Now, the bar collar is simply addressing the symptom, which is he's barking because of anxiety, or he's kenneled, or he doesn't want to be away from you. So it'll correct the barking. What we'll be doing with training is what's going to be addressing the root of the barking. So they go hand in hand. Okay. So, and that you can most likely just start right off the bat, because it's simply, when we're dealing with behavior, what makes it simple is that simply don't do that. Okay. And I know people talk about, well, you got to teach them, like with the veterinarian said, like, you know, don't interact an hour before, which I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to prevent overstimulation so that when he's kenneled, it doesn't come out, right? But that's actually not the problem. This is the problem. The problem is he's just overstimulated as is. So physicality is actually what shuts all this down, okay? So another dog, if he was in another dog's presence and this dog was like, you know what, man, you're crazy. Like, you got to cut that crap out. They would just come bite him. And then if he respected that correction, he would just shut up. That's it. Okay. In our world, we have like teach kids, like at church, you don't scream and yell. You know, when you're at the park, you can yell and you run around and, you know, be a kid, but then you can't like call kids bad names. Like, you can educate them, and as a human in self-awareness, we can apply those things. Dogs don't do that.
No.
Okay.
They're dogs.
So when it comes to stopping behaviors, it's fairly simple, because it's simply an aversive for things you don't want. Okay. Now that only addresses, again, the symptom. So if you, let's say you just walked out of here and said, I'm not going to do training, I'm going to do that bark collar. What you would get is you'd still have the same dog out here. He would shut up in the kennel at some point because of that collar, because he knows if I bark, something's going to happen. But then he's still going to be this dog.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So when we do the training in conjunction with the collar, the training is for this stuff, and the bark collar handles the stuff when you're gone. Okay. Now, whether or not that bark collar goes away just depends. You know, some dogs yes, some dogs no. Because you're gone. There's nothing that you can do when you're gone, right? It's just, he's got it, and if he needs it, it's on. Just stop him. Otherwise, like, it's not a big deal. Okay. Now, unfortunately, and I know it's because of the collapsed trachea, your harness exacerbates this problem.
I know.
Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
The trainer talked about it. That'll work with him without him just starting coughing horribly.
Right.
Which then persists for hours and hours after.
Does this have a front clip at all?
It does not.
It does not. Okay.
I also brought with me, we did the head harness briefly.
The gentle leader?
Yeah. Doesn't do much. He doesn't, predators were saying having the e-collar was like, oh, this is bad. He doesn't take me pulling on that as bad. He will fling himself and like flail backwards from his neck, and I'm like afraid he's going to hurt himself.
Sure.
But it's in no way a deterrent for him from like going and trying to bite somebody.
Sure. Talking about the gentle leader, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So with doing the e-collar, we don't have to worry about anything on the throat, right? Because it will be making contact, but we always go for the sides. We don't have to worry about. And I've worked with dogs with collapsed trachea before. It's not very common, but as long as we don't put it super tight, and luckily he's got like a thinner fur. It's not as thick. We shouldn't have an issue getting contact here. We can attempt it with the harness in the beginning to see what happens, but it may be a bit difficult because the harness gives you the least amount of control. I'd most likely have you opt for a front clip harness.
So we have tried that. He can escape from anything. I went with the trainer and made sure it was tight enough. He can still get out of it.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So I don't know if we could do both, have the front harness as the.
Oh, we could do a double.
Yeah.
So you can.
Just so he doesn't escape.
For sure. I mean, he's small, so it's not like the. If you had a bigger dog, I'd say this wouldn't be a problem. But what we'd end up doing is doing the e-collar. I'd probably end up with your setup. I'd most likely have you bring that gentle leader as well, just to see what we can figure out.
Yeah. Yeah, even when we do the gentle leader, he has to have this too, because he can get out of it. Given enough time.
Sure. No, I believe you. All right. Let me think here. So the way I would approach this case first, did you watch any of our videos?
Yeah.
You did on YouTube and stuff? Okay. So when we get cases like this, when it comes to behavior, behavior and obedience are two different things. You know, obedience is like education, behavior is like morality. You know, don't jump, don't bark, don't bite, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat. Math, English, science, that's how I look at it. Is when we teach them like the healing concept, it's not so much the healing concept that I care about, it's the discipline that we put behind it. It's the physical contractions of the remote.
Yeah.
That's what's actually doing all the work. Okay, so I don't want you to think that obedience fixes the problem, it's the discipline behind it.
Definitely.
You know? So the one thing that the healing exercise will do or can do is get him to just focus in. So he has no off switch right now, right? Like anytime something happens, like he's barking, he's starting to settle a little bit because he's starting to lay down now, but he's still scouting around, his ears are back, he's like in a very anxious state, right? Is what we're trying to do here is make him more worried about you and what you're doing than he is about the environment, okay? Once he zones in on you, did you watch any of like our healing videos? Like okay, it's the first class.
Okay.
And I'll give you a couple of videos that I recommend that you watch to give you an idea of like how this should work. You know, theoretically, once we get them to lock in, because my style of heel is right shoulder to left leg. I don't care what the environment, this is why we're at Oz, because I'm like, if you can train your dog here, anywhere else should not be a problem, okay? Is we're in a very realistic context, we're sometimes unrealistic, because like Jesse, it's super quiet by me, so like this is not, like my neighborhood's nothing, right? So I want them at that hip, no tension in the leash. People, strollers, rollerbladers, dogs, bikers, scooters, segways, everything just going by, boom, he's here. Because he's more concerned about you than everything else. So what ends up happening is, since he's so dialed in on you, it's allowing the brain to process these things passing and not being like feeling threatened, because he's more concerned here. So then he's like, oh, like this whole time I thought this stuff moving was gonna be bad, but now that I can't, like I have to really focus on mom, like nothing's happening. And that's how we hope, ideally, start to those stress levels come down. Because he's like, then you start to expose him more. So like, let's say some trainers will tell you like, you know, walk at a busy place like this to expose your dog, get him used to it. But when he's in this state with nothing to dial him down, you're doing nothing.
Yeah.
You're just stressing your dog.
That's what it's felt like for months.
Yes. So once we get him to dial in, and we can start, like, let's say we do get outburst, we have a means of stopping it, because when the stress happens, or the stressor happens, and his response goes into fight mode, and you go, nope, that's not an option, and you keep correcting it, at some point, he has to figure out another way of handling stress. And so we have fight, flight, avoidance, submission. He can't run away because he's on a leash. If he starts to fight, we can correct it with the e-collar. That leaves avoidance and submission, okay? So avoidance would be, he sees a scooter coming, and goes, I don't like that scooter, but instead of lunging and barking, I'm just gonna do this and let it pass. And then once it passes, you might even see him come back like this. That's how he's gonna handle the stressor. We let that go in the beginning. Because I go, that's a better choice than lunging and barking, right? In some cases, it'll just, as it progresses, you'll end up learning, oh, I don't even have to avoid it, like nothing really happens. And then you just get a nice, chilled out, relaxed dog that can tolerate these things, okay? Every case is different when you're dealing with an animal, it's not a machine. Like I can't, like a car, if you need a fuel pump, you go to the mechanic, I need a fuel pump, they put a fuel pump and you drive your car, no problem. With him, there's an emotional state, there's your skills as a handler, there's the environment, there's a lot of variables in play, okay? So what I do is I give you the insight, the tools, the exercises to practice, and we're trying to get them as close to stability as possible, okay? Everybody's level of progress is going to be different. Like we have a lady whose dog was super reactive the first time he came. He actually looks like a bigger version. Doesn't Finn look like a bigger version of this guy? He looks like a taller version, it's Buddy, right?
Yeah.
Of Buddy, like literally like a taller German Shepherd type version of him, right?
Nice.
And first day here, like reacted with everything. It was really hard on the owner, but she stuck to it. She did everything. 180 the next time we saw her. Nothing, right? Nothing. And but it took her having to correct all those issues of reactivity. So then he learned like, oh, like these aren't options, so I gotta figure out. And now, like you'll see, like she's here, and he'll go like this when the dog's passing, and then he'll go like this once the dog is gone, right? So he's still a bit uncomfortable, but it's better than the fight response, right? But for her, like I can see, I'm like, you can already walk past dogs, like you're good. But for her, she much rather step aside and let it pass and then walk, you know? Because that's how we start off. It's easier to control your dog when you're stationary. And I told her, like, you know, you're fine, you can keep going. She's like, I prefer to do this. And I go, then that's fine as well. Because she feels more empowered, she feels more confident, she feels like she has the most control. Just like letting that go by and not having to worry about if we're in passing something happen, right? So everybody progresses differently. Okay, I don't care. For me, there's no right or wrong that I've learned in this in working with dogs. It's just what's going to work for the moment, what's going to work for the owner, what's going to work for the dog, and then we just kind of adapt and go by that. Okay. Question so far. The way I would see this progress, I don't really think this is a really long kind of behavior program like that. Judging by what you're wanting to achieve, so that's how I kind of go about things. I assess the dog, I assess the situation. I go, what does the owner want? And then from there, I'll give you an estimated time and cost, okay? You're probably, if all you care about is just the activity, dialing them down outside, the lunging and barking, the anxiety in the kennel, that main focus would be my 6-week program. That's my shorter program. It's 1 day a week for an hour. First 2 classes are gonna be around the healing exercise. This is gonna be the foundation for everything, okay? This teaches you how the e-collar works. This teaches Buddy how the e-collar works, how it turns on, how it turns off. And we see what does it fix, right? So class 1, here's the exercise. I teach you, I coach you. I don't touch Buddy. You're doing it all yourself, okay? So I personally love this approach more because nothing's associated to me. Prior to COVID, I would work with the dog, and then I'd hand the dog to you, and then I would coach you. But I would do all the hard work essentially. But now with me coaching the owner, they're doing everything from ground zero up, so they get a very good concept and understanding of how e-collar works. Okay? And it's been very effective. That's also why I love e-collar, is because now I don't even have to touch the dog. I can coach the owner. We're here in a realistic environment, and they're getting the results as long as they practice. Okay? So week 1, first half of heel, here's your homework, we'll see you in the week. Week 2, how to go. Man, Jesse, great. Much less reactivity, not barking at dogs, not barking at people, right? And I go, great. What have you seen reactivity? Oh, if a dog is too close, like there's a proximity. Then I go, okay, we're gonna make a couple of tweaks. We're gonna work on the second half of heel. We'll see you next week. Come back week 3. How's it going? And you just fill me in as we go along, okay? The kennel stuff, as soon as you can just get the bar collar and you just start applying it right away. If you'd rather do the first class of e-collar then the bar collar, you can do that as well, so that he has an association of what the bar collar is with the e-collar. So same technology, but it's applied a little bit differently. The corrections are a little bit harsher because it's meant to just stop something. It's not really caring about, like, you know, emotional state or making the dog like somebody. It's just stop barking. Okay, so we'll get you that information, and then classes 3 to 6 is just how does this work with Buddy. Okay, so if we see by week 3 everything's going very well, maybe you want to work on socialization stuff with them. How can I get Buddy to, like, allow me to have guests come over, and have friends come over, things like that. Okay, is he muzzle conditioned?
Not quite.
Okay, so have you tried to muzzle condition him at all?
We've tried muzzling for certain situations, but not with any guidance, really.
Okay, then we'd help you with that. Okay, so muzzle training is easy. We'll send you some videos. You simply I would use his feeding times for the muzzle training. You would start that process as soon as possible, okay? Because what we're trying to do is make him not care about the muzzle, like it's just like another thing that he wears. But almost always when we have a dog that has issues with aggression and you're removing their primary source of defense, almost always do they end up trying to fight the muzzle anyway. Okay, so we do the counter conditioning first in this process before we need it, just to get everything in play. So then when we do need it, if he's still fighting it, we do what I call force conditioning, okay? And that's using the e-collar to make the dog submit to the muzzle and stop fighting it. But having the counter conditioning before makes that process easier, okay? So we have our own videos on muzzle conditioning. We have other videos from other trainers that we send and say, you can watch these, do this every day until we see you, until the time that we need it, just so you get it done. A lot of people will put it off and they'll wait until like the week before they need the muzzle, and then when we're there, it's like really, it's really hard. So we would start that process, you know, as soon as today. If you already have one, you can start practicing with it. And then, what kind of muzzle do you have? Okay, so we'd want to get a basket style. You can use this just to start the muzzle training process. The brand that we recommend is Baskerville. It's a basket style muzzle. It allows them to pant, open his mouth, breathe, drink water, take food, and all that stuff. So it's meant for extended wear. This is like going to the vet, going to the groomer, real momentary, 30 minutes to an hour, not meant for anything too long, okay? So we can get you that information is on my website as well. I told Maria to give you that information. We have a link on our website called Training Resources, and it talks about prong collars, e-collars, things that we need, muzzle training, all that stuff. It's like one solid resource for our clients, and then it will give you all the information that you need, okay? So then, yeah, if everything's going good, then by class 3, if you're like, hey, I would like socializing, we go over that with you, show you how that's done. I'm going to test him too with my sleeve here to see what he's got behind him, that little mark, see if there's any real intent in terms of biting. And then that'll kind of let us know how we need to approach it, okay? The socialization exercise is simple because it's like here's the information, and then it's just practice it, okay? Have you ever had any guests come over with this guy that trusted people like you do?
Yes. So I found there's a very specific procedure he needs for that to be okay. If somebody comes to our door, no, it's not happening. The entire time they're there, he's very aggressive. I have to leave and walk in with him. I put him behind a dog gate, and I come over and I let him bark it out, get used to the person sniffing. Then he's okay. Still won't trust them, but it's not going to bite them.
Sure. So, is he like growling afterwards?
Yes.
If they move, if everything calms down and it's quiet, if they get up and move, does it trigger? That's a nervous response.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, we have an exercise for that as well. Okay, that we can work on. If everything's going great behaviorally and you're making good progress, then we go to just formal obedience, recall stuff. You know, that's the next most important command. But we're going to prioritize this behavior first. Okay.
Stop it.
Yeah, he is super on edge. Questions so far? Hey, do you have your mask?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have Enrique here. Is that a new one?
No.
Oh.
I have a few of these.
Oh, really? He's gonna do. We're gonna do what I did with Kirby earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep your distance, and then when he goes for the sleeve, you can feel on the sleeve like the intensity, and you're gonna just evaluate it. Okay. So what I'm gonna have you do is just keep your leash short like that, and if you'd like, you can even go like this, so you're stepped away and you're just outstretched like that.
And what areas am I touching?
Just go to approach him. We're gonna see what he does. Yeah. Keep the pressure on. Keep touching him. Yeah. Yep, just keep touching. Yeah, keep your hand there. Take a step in, Enrique. There you go. There you go. Yeah. Good. Yep, and you back away. All right. So I can tell, man, that was a 0.1 on the Richter scale. Okay, so that's good.
Yeah.
So what we have is high stress, low level aggression. So that's where this comes into play. It's very easy to look at a dog like that and go like, that's an aggressive dog. I look at it like humans, like we get anxious, they get anxious, we get scared, they get scared, we can become aggressive, they can become aggressive, right? And usually due to stress. So here, Enrique just went right in his personal space, and I don't know if you saw, he did like a side of the mouth kind of bite. Real quick, it was nothing, right? And then I don't know if you saw the real quick biting, that we call that piano biting. That's all panic, okay? It looks threatening, it looks really bad, but there's no real intent. He's just so neurotic that it's just, he can't help it, okay? So that I'm not too worried about. So if he would have grabbed it and then I go, oh man, that's a high stress, high aggression dog. Okay, so I'm gonna gamble that once we settle him down, we're not even gonna see that anymore. Okay, if we do see it, it's correctable. Okay, question so far?
The only thing I might mention is once he's used to people being near him, he's less aggressive than he is with like people on the street.
Okay.
He's like getting people's shorts and stuff.
Yeah. So think of it this way: if you really wanted to bite, you would have bit. Okay. Dogs are really good about warning bites. You know, so when someone tells me like, "Oh, the dog almost bit me, but I was too quick," I'm like, "No."
No, the dog would have got you.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not too worried about it. On the scope of reactivity, it's a spectrum. There's human reactivity. Then we have like calm dogs, or reactive towards calm dogs. Then we have excited puppy type energy. Then we have other reactive dogs, and then like sudden run-ins with dogs, right? That's the spectrum. This human reactivity is usually the first thing that goes away, and then everything else in that progression from human reactivity to calm dog reactivity to excited dog reactivity, that's usually the first thing that goes. The last two, other reactive dogs or turn the corner dog, those are very end of spectrum, because one, if the other person has a reactive dog, they tend to want to leave the situation too. So then if he's barking still when they leave, then he thinks that he got his way. Or the sudden run-ins, like you can't plan for something to just happen, right? So that tends to be end of spectrum, but this stuff is almost always the first thing that goes away. Okay? So I'm not worried about it. How much is 22 pounds? Okay. So you technically have two options for the e-collar. One runs about $237 with cats. It's meant for 35-pound dogs and under. And the other one runs $287 with cats. It's meant for 70 pounds and under. Okay. Now the reason why I'm bringing that one up is because you have to think about the level of stress. Okay. People tend to go by the size of the dog. Oh, he's not that big. I'm like, yeah, but if the dog's under a lot of stress and they're physically tolerant towards discomfort, you may need a lot of power. Okay. So the difference in them is not just the output, but the size of the collar as well. The 237 one, it's a smaller box. You know, it's meant for 35-pound dogs, right? The other one, since it's meant for larger dogs, tends to be a bigger box. I think it's about 1.5 times bigger, okay? So if you get the bigger one, he might look a little dopey because he's got this big old box in his neck, right? But I'm thinking more so, are we gonna have enough power to just de-escalate him and not have to worry about it, okay? You can do either or. The difference would be, like, let's say on the smaller, lower powered collar, his number could be like 80, and on the bigger collar, it might be like 30, 35, because there's more output, so you get a bit more with less, okay? And then it just leaves you a bigger window in case, yeah, if you need it. I've never had a dog outgrow the collar, okay? I've had a couple of really bad aggression cases where they needed 2 collars, but ultimately, like, the owner had the control. And these were 150-pound dogs, so, you know, not worried about this guy here. So I would err on the side of caution and suggest you just get the bigger one. But at the end of the day, it is your choice. Maria will give you the links to both that we recommend, and you can, you know, read up on them, do your research and stuff. So like right now, I have a corgi that we're training, and technically the same weight range. And I told him I'd opt for the bigger one. And in the first class, we were like at 75 because the dog he's kind of like this, super stressed out and like all over the place. And then by the next week he was at like 30 or so, but they at least had that power if needed. Okay. I think with the 6 classes, plus you get 2 Zooms as well, so you technically get 8 hours of work with me for the same price of what 6 classes were before. And we'll really focus on that behavior after the 2 healing classes to see what does this resolve, and then change everything else as needed. If everything's going well and you're like, holy crap, like I didn't think this would be that easy, then we just go with obedient stuff, because then that's just more control. You know, you get recalls, so you can take them out and let them enjoy life or whatever. Now, earlier you mentioned something about I don't want them to be so anxious and like stressed out in the environment. I like them to be happy. We may not get that. What we'll get is a dog that's not lunging and barking, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, he's just still stressed. Okay, but he's learning to handle that stress better. He's learning to keep himself in check and not like doing all of this nonsense. Okay. If he does turn around, sometimes it happens within the 6 weeks, sometimes it happens a year later. But the owner's just making continuous progress, and they just feel good, like at least I have control. I don't know what it's going to be, okay? All I know is that it does fall on you. If I show you the exercises and I go, you know what, man, Buddy needs 65 in order to cut the crap, and you come back week 2, and I'm like, how'd it go? You're like, it was really bad. And I go, how high did you go? And you say, I only went to 25. I'll say 25 and 65, right? Then we're gonna have some issues there, okay? When we do this, we start low, we work our way up. It's very kind of logical. It makes sense when you start doing it. We don't come in and just go 100 and wail on the dog. There's a process to it, okay? Any questions or concerns?
These meetings, would they be here?
Yes, we would be here. We usually work right there in that center area because usually that's where all the traffic is, okay? Maria would pick the time and scheduling with you. I don't know what my schedule is like. She knows. She'll send you a form to read over, and then you get a portion of your consultation credit towards your program. She'd send you the information. I'll tell her to send you the training resources link so you can look into the muzzle, and then she'll give you the information for the $2 as well. For the muzzle, just as a heads up, we've had a couple of people measure their dogs, and then they go by the measurements, and for whatever reason, it's putting them a size higher. For your guy, he's probably going to be like a size 1 or 2. Okay. And what some people do is they order like the one and they need, and they think they need another one, and they just return whatever they don't need, just so they don't have to worry about the hassle. But he's probably going to be like a size 1 or 2, and then we'll just play it by ear. In terms of cases that I recommend on our YouTube channel, Leon he was very similar to this guy when he showed up. He's the corgi that I just mentioned. He just had class 2 yesterday. He would be a good one to watch. Finn, we've had 2 Finns, but when you look up his video, it's the German Shepherd. He looks just like this guy, but taller. His week 1 or lesson 1. The lesson 1s are always great to watch because nobody knows anything. The owner doesn't know anything, the dog doesn't know anything. It's just me coaching him, and you can see from beginning to end just the process. I don't limit my clients. So we have another client who's been training with us, and she watches our YouTube videos, and she's like, I already started doing this stuff. So I'm like, all right, well then we just move on to the next thing because you're making progress. That's why we put it up. We just want to educate people. So if you end up watching stuff, you're making great progress, and you want to just kind of advance and get as much out of this, that's what it's there for. When you come in, I go, okay, great, good job. Let's build off of this then. Okay? Anything else? All right. Well, Emily, it was a pleasure meeting you. If you have any questions, you let me know. I'll get Maria. She'll get in contact with you. And then if you forgot to ask anything, feel free to reach out, and then we'll just take it from there. Okay? Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good one.